Hello everybody, welcome back here. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Scott and I'm continuing with my grammar on relative clauses. Now, previously I really hope you watched, on my relative clauses of defining relative clauses, which is necessary information to be able to understand the sentence. So today this time I want to focus on, this time I want to focus on non-defining relative clauses. Non-defining relative clauses give extra information into the sentence. It's not necessary to understand the sentence, but you want to put in some extra information sometimes. This is what this is about, non-defining relative clauses. Now, non-defining are probably more, not so much spoken English, but especially for written English when you're writing. And the difference in the writing aspect of it, with the defining relative clauses, there are no commas. But with the non-defining relative clauses, when writing, the non-defining relative clause is separated by commas or a comma if it finishes the end of the sentence. So, and I'll explain on spoken English if you are using non-defining relative clauses. So let me get to an example first. The same case with who or which I'm going to focus on here. Now, just a note here that for defining relative clauses, that is possible to use, like this is the book that I borrowed. But for non-defining relative clauses, you cannot use that. So it's only going to be a relative pronoun of who or which, where or so, when or so, but not that. So let me give you an example. So the school, which is purple and pink, has a long history, okay? Just the school has a long history by itself is enough to understand the sentence. But I wanted to put in some extra information on the vibrant colors of this school. So the school, which is purple and pink, has a long history, is one case. And talking about the thing is the school here. So the school, which is purple and pink, has a long history. Now, if I use a non-defining relative clause for a person with a who in that case, the teacher who comes from Pennsylvania started working there 18 years ago. I connected into that school situation there as well. You might have caught that. So the teacher who comes from Pennsylvania started working there 18 years ago. Okay, and I don't need to put the who comes from Pennsylvania in there. That's extra information, and I did. So just the teacher started working there 18 years ago is enough to understand the sentence, but I wanted to put in some extra information. And when written, who comes from Pennsylvania would be separated by commas. Now, what do you do, if you're speaking this, not writing it? Now, you might have noticed it when I read those sentences, when I said those sentences there. So, the school, pause, lower my tone, which is purple and pink, pause, raise my tone again, has a long history. So you notice it's separated when I speak by a pause and a little bit lower tone on that non-defining relative clause. So the teacher, who comes from Pennsylvania, started working there 18 years ago. You can notice the pauses and the lower tone in speaking that. And I do want to say that this is a non-defining relative clause. I don't say exactly this is a non-defining relative clause who comes from Pennsylvania. So I'll pause and lower the tone of my voice. Okay, everybody? So that's the non-defining relative clause when speaking. When writing, put in those commas. And remember that the non-defining relative clause is used to give extra information. Also, that is not grammatically possible to use, so stay away from that in that situation. All right? Now, the last thing I want to do on this episode here is, can you understand the difference in these two sentences? So, let me read these first, and let me say these first. It's also going to be written here on the screen. So the students who finish their studies can leave early, as you see here. The students who finish their studies can leave early. This is a defining relative clause. So the students who finish their studies can leave early. Now, I can make this into a non-defining relative clause by putting in the commas and also saying it like this. The students who finish their studies can leave early. Okay, first defining again. The students who finish their studies can leave early. And non-defining. The students who finish their studies can leave early. Now, exactly the same words, but my meaning is different. The nuance is different here. Can you understand what the difference is in this nuance? Using the students who finish their studies can leave early, and the students who finish their studies can leave early. That's a question I'd like to ask you, and maybe I can ask you to put it in a comment, or I can just give you the answer right now. So when I say in a defining relative clause, the students who finish their studies can leave early. Not all the students finish their studies. Only the students who finish their studies can leave early. But the students who did not finish their studies cannot leave early. That's a defining relative clause. Now, the students can leave early means that all the students can leave early. And who finish their studies is extra information in that regard. But it's not necessary to understand the sentence. So the students, comma, who finish their studies, comma, can leave early means that all the students can leave early. And the former sentence, the first sentence, the students who finish their studies can leave early means that only the students who finish their studies can leave early. Students who did not finish their studies cannot leave early. And you can see how the meaning can change and the situation can change depending on a defining or a non-defining relative clause. And I hope that did not confuse you and I was able to explain it and you're able to grasp it of what I mean in the last example there on the students. Okay, everybody? That's what I wanted to work on in my relative clauses. Previously we had defining relative clauses and this time non-defining relative clauses. Now, of course, if you have any questions or something you're not clear on, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you leave in any comments in this case. So please feel free to contact us anytime with your questions or your comments. And thanks again for watching. Thank you for being here, and I'll be back here again soon. And have a great day. I'll be seeing you before too long.